to speak briefly about my experiences at my house. So I'm the crazy guy in my neighborhood and trying some different things with my lawn. And, I think a big piece of it is what I see in the news. So I was the most altered landscape biologically, and then my students have worked on projects related to that. And that really hit home for me as a homeowner. I want to do something different. I moved to my neighborhood because of some of the features that are there. But the turf grass lawn is really something that impacts things a lot, water quality and whatnot. Habitat's a big piece, right? 1800s, early 1800s, Iowa was 80% prairie, right? And that's a habitat, that's a ecological, biological water filter. Now it's 0.1% of our prairies left, right? 1/1000th. And that changes a lot of things related to water quality habitat. It looks like this, right? There's water coming off us, off our lawns, off the impervious surfaces. Where are the insects going to live to feed the birds and all the wildlife, right? Most of that's gone. Everything you experience on a daily basis, it isn't what it was like in the early 1800s. Nothing is like it unless you drive by the Ames High Prairie. So my neighborhood's pretty much like the rest of Ames in some ways, right? We've got irrigated lawns, non-irrigated lawns, turf grass that's non-native to Iowa, but we also have prairie strips. We also have prairie strips in the backyard that go and drain to a pond and help filter some of the water, and I really like that. But my turf grass was my last thing I wanted to really change, and so my yard started out like this in 2011. Similar grasses to everybody, and I wanted to minimize it. Here's my backyard. I wanted to minimize my amount of mowing, try to incorporate native plants for habitat and water cleansing, but also change this. This is non-native turf grass has 8-inch deep roots, right? And that's the sponge I have. Buffalo grass, these two varieties that I used out of Stock Seed, Nebraska, they have 3 foot or more deep roots. That's a big sponge for water, right? And I can change my lawn into that. They have a lot of resources on here. I'd go to Stock Seed if you're looking for the specifics of what I learned here in my process. I'm gonna run through a bunch of pictures starting from the beginning. So first of all, non-native turf grasses, most of them are cool season grasses. We have native ones too, but they love the water times. And so spring, when it's cool, they grow and start growing early and greening up. And in the fall, they grow. In the summer, they tend to go dormant. Warm season grasses stay dormant for a while, grow during the summer, and then green up, go dormant again in the winter. Here's buffalo grass. It spreads like a strawberry. Most of our non-native turf grasses spread by their roots. This spreads over land, and you can see the little runners with the buffalo grass. And so if you have any spots, it fills in. You can also see my contractor grade soil here with all the rocks in it that it was growing in, and it did great. So this is the early part. You can see down here I've got some dates. So April 23rd, 2017, you can see the stripes. I've sprayed glyphosate on there to try to start to kill the grass. And I did it in multiple different ways. So I've got multiple treatments that I was trying. This is, after this dies, I tilled it up. And here you can see a little while later, I've tilled it up. I'm going to try to remove most of these clumps and prepare a seed bed. You can see I had an Iowa One call, so they locate my utilities, so I'm not, damaging anything there. And then I start to put in my beds and my smaller spaces that I'm actually going to put this buffalo grass turf into. You have to prepare the soil. So now we're talking May 14th. I've got the soil prepared. This parking area on both sides, I actually seeded it right away when the soil got to be 60 degrees. Warm season grasses, you can't seed early like you can cool season grasses. But the problem is the warm season grasses also seed at the same time. This was a little behind back here. So you can see 2 weeks later, I'm weeding this first part because all the weeds grow at the same rate as the grass. And I learned that lesson. I'd never do it again like that. And it took me about a half hour just to get this much. And you can see I've got some buffalo grass left in there, but man, there was a lot of weed pressure in this first part. So in the second half, or in the back half, this part I started second, over here, I actually got to kill all that warm season weeds before. So I flushed it out with the temperature, and then I killed it and then seeded it, and I didn't have any weed pressure in this. So I had 2 different trials I was rolling here, and this was all direct seed. I put the seed on the soil and kind of get it contacted. And this is June of that first year. So by April, so 2 months later, you can see this area is already growing pretty thick buffalo grass, and the area in the parking is full of buffalo grass, but also a lot of crabgrass. It's an annual, so I knew how to deal with it the second year, but you can also see my native plant beds were coming along nicely, but they take a few years to establish as well. So I got 3 different treatments here in my front yard. Parking area with the direct seed right when soil temps reach 60, the direct seed after first flush of the warm season grasses, and then I didn't get to it. You can't seed this thing in the fall like cool season grasses. I had to wait till the next year. So I seeded oats as a cover crop, hold the soil, provide some organic matter, and it would die over the winter anyway. So a year after I seeded basically and started this process, you can see buffalo grass will be yellow in the winter when it's dormant. I see a lot more yellow here, I see less here, which means I had a lot of stuff to fill in for these to go runners and fill in versus the crabgrass. I put pre-emergent down, which kills the seed from when it starts to germinate from the annuals. But by June of that year, I had pretty good coverage of buffalo grass in that site, in that second site. But in the first site, by the end of the second growing season, it had filled in too. So it just takes a little longer if you do it the way, or it's harder. But you could get good coverage in the first growing season with that method. So in my other area where I did the oats, it was a lot faster. So I had the oats die off over the winter. I plugged the buffalo grass. So this, I grew plugs in a greenhouse and I put them in the ground in May. And then not too long later, those plugs start spreading. And you can see in my next photo that's going to come up, this is on a timer of 20 seconds. You can see the plug, by June 22nd, the plugs are already starting to fan out and spread by runners. And by September that year I plugged it, it was already basically in. So plugs are the way to go if you want to get it the first year. Although I did pretty good with the direct seed too. And just to give you a sense of what it looks like, after it's established in the winter, this is my lawn now. You can, cut it, trim it. It looks pretty good compared to my neighbor who is, cool season grass. And in the winter, you're going to get a yellow look to it. This has a few leaves from the trees. There's a few brown spots from the leaves, but in general, it does look different. It goes yellow faster in the winter. But yeah, overall, this is my experience. And if you have questions, I'd love to talk about it. You can drive by like people from the city do. So thank you.